Welcome to Get On With It, Inspiration for Life and Leadership. I'm your host, Sue MacArthur, President of Strategic Talent Management. We've all met them, the people who have a presence and a unique point of view that make us want to lean in and say, tell me more. In this podcast, we celebrate these people and provide a platform through which they can share their insights. Whether you lead a company, a community organization, or just your own life, we offer you these moments of clarity, hope, and inspiration. So let's get on with it. I'm so excited to welcome John Graham to the podcast today. John is an author, adventurer, former diplomat, and citizen activist. He's repeatedly sought the meaning of his life in many places where it wasn't. He finally found the purpose he sought in service, in helping solve significant public problems, and in making life better for other people. For over 40 years, he has led the Giraffe Heroes project, a nonprofit organization which honors people who stick their necks out to solve problems, whether small and local or big and global. Welcome to Get On With It, John.
Thank you. Sue, thank you very much. And I must quickly correct you because my wife Ann is in the other room. I do help lead the Giraffe Heroes project, but she started it. I wasn't smart enough and creative enough to do something as massive as the Giraffe Heroes project, but Ann Medlock, who was a single mother in New York City at the time, started it in 1982. It's her brainchild. I quickly saw what was going on, and then I fell madly in love with her. And so we've been together as marital partners and business partners for over 42 years, working together on the Giraffe Project. But Ann Medlock started it all, and she's my mentor and my muse.
Oh, that's wonderful. What a great origin story. So your early life was marked by extraordinary adventure. You shipped out at age 16, went hitchhiking through the Algerian Revolution, interesting choice, and climbed Denali's North Wall at 20. How did these very risk-filled experiences shape your worldview and your understanding of courage?
Yeah, it's interesting because the motive for all of that stuff, and believe me, my bumper sticker is I'm lucky to be alive.
I
Fact of the matter is that by the time I was like 40, I'd faced a violent death. I mean, close faced a violent death a dozen times, and then I kept walking away from it all. But in any case, what I want to say was, is the really beginning to the answering your question is. That I grew up in a small American city, Tacoma, where nothing ever happened, and in a family where nothing ever happened. We were a totally typical American family, two kids, mom, dad. Dad worked for the newspaper, and I was miserable especially as a teen, because I was relentlessly bullied. I grew up way too. I grew physically so fast that I could barely stumble walking upstairs. So I was beaten up all the time. And I really hated it. I wanted to figure out how to be a man, and I couldn't figure out how to do that because my own dad, I loved my dad, of course, but he was a really gentle guy, and he got pushed around, and I saw this all the time. He got pushed around relentlessly at work, bypassed for promotions and stuff. And so my dad wasn't the role model I was looking for. And so I was thoroughly miserable. Then came that first incident you mentioned. I was, in fact, 16, almost turning 17, when I got a job. That's a long story, but I won't go into it. As a seaman on a ship a freighter ship going to the Far East and back. This is before container ships. So these ships were cargo ships run by 50 or 60 really tough guys, right?
Mm.
And they had muscles and tattoos and stuff. And oh, wow. They took one look at me, this little skinny little kid from Tacoma, Washington, and they said, man, we got life lessons to teach you, buddy. You'll never learn in school. But the most important thing was, like, a first or second night out on that ship, one of the seamen approached me, and another seaman, a huge black guy named Roy, must have weighed 250, 60 pounds. He grabs this first man, shoves him up against the bulkhead, beats the shit out of him, and then lets loose this remarkable string of cuss words. I was magnificent. And I just sat there. I'd never seen violence in my life. I'd never heard cussing like that. So I went back down to my room and I practiced cussing in front of the mirror like Roy. This guy's name was Roy. He worked in the engine room. And then I practiced beating some up against, throwing some up against the wall, someone up against the wall and beating them up. Because I finally discovered the model for manhood I was looking for wasn't my own father. It was Roy, the guy from the engine room. That's what I
Oh,
wanted to be. And sure enough, I mean that set the stage for the rest of the answer to your question. That set the stage, and for the next 10 years, all I did was make that picture more and more real. I did, in fact, hitchhike through the Algerian Revolution, but at least I was smart enough to put an American flag on my chest, so the rebels wouldn't kill me as a Frenchman. Uh, and then the climb up Denali, well, it was more than just that. It was the first ascent of one of the most dangerous mountain walls in the world, and higher top to bottom than anything on Mount Everest. And no one had climbed it before because it was so insanely dangerous because of the avalanches. But we climbed it, close calls almost every day. Took 38 days to do it. It's now an epic climb in North American mountaineering. You can read about it in climbing books. After I graduated from college, I hitchhiked around the world, literally. Well, not the oceans, of course, but I hitchhiked around the world with one adventure after the other, this time working as a stringer for the Boston Globe, and wading into wars in Cyprus and Laos and the beginning of America's war in Vietnam. And all the time, I kept walking away from all this stuff, and all the time, I got more and more addicted to adrenaline rushes from these adventures.
hmm.
Oh, by the way, while I was in college, I rode crew. So I put on like 30, 35 pounds of muscle. So by the time I graduated college, I was 6.5 feet tall and really tough and strong. So I really was capable of carrying out these adventures.
Hmm.
And there I was hitchhiking around the world. And it was an incredible opening life. And it wasn't for another some years during a battle in Vietnam that I finally figured things out, that wasn't the life I wanted. I'm going to shut up now because I could ramble on forever, but that's the opening answer to your first question.
Okay. Now, you spent 15 years in the Foreign Service in places like Libya and Vietnam and NATO. What were some pivotal moments in your Foreign Service career that helped transform you from being a diplomat to a public servant?
Hmm. Well, the first transition, most important transition, was from being an adrenaline junkie to a diplomat, and then on from there. But I was, in fact, a U.S. Foreign Service officer, but I was never in embassies in Europe. I never wore striped pants or a top hat. I got into that part of the Foreign Service that dealt with wars and revolutions, nasty stuff. And because I was big and tough, I could do all that kind of stuff, and the State Department kept rewarding me for doing it. So, and each Foreign Service adventure was more extreme than the one before. I was in the middle of the revolution in Libya, for example, when Muammar Gaddafi came to power. And I just loved it. I mean, other people at the embassy were freaking out when they saw burning cars in the public square or rock throwing mobs. And I just loved it because it was like adventure. It was like more of this stuff. It was like Roy, the big guy in the Golden Bear, the ship. It was just another culmination of a life that was just nothing but one wild ass adventure after the other. So then I asked the State Department after Libya to send me to the most dangerous assignment they had. So they says, fine, and sent me as the advisor to the mayor of Hue, which was a small city and then South Vietnam, famous for the Tet Offensive. But I was sent there, and my job was part of my job was pretty benign, doing foreign aid work, building wells and schools and stuff. But most of it was political intelligence and counterintelligence. So it was insanely dangerous, which I really liked. Uh,
Hmm.
And I had to be smart and tough to survive for a year and a half in Vietnam. And then came toward the end of the tour. Most of your viewers probably won't remember this, but there was something called the Easter Offensive when the North Vietnamese tried to take over all of Vietnam in 1972, and they failed, not by much, but they failed. And then 3 years later, of course, they came back and finished the job. They poured across the demarcation line between North and South Vietnam, and Hue was only 50 miles south of that line. So all of a sudden, I was in the city, basically surrounded by advancing North Vietnamese troops. This was after Kissinger and Nixon had arranged for the American troops to withdraw, 1971, 72. I had no protection. The American Army and Marine Corps people that were stationed up there had all gone home. So there was like four or five of us left in the city. All of us were civilians. And then it suddenly caught up with me. And here's the answer to your question. It caught up with me that here was I. My home was 6,000 miles away. I hated the war. I knew from the very beginning it was wrong, it was stupid, it was immoral, and we were losing, losing, losing. It was so
Mm.
clear. And then it suddenly occurred to me how shallow that life was. I mean, I thought I had a heart. I thought there was more to me than this. And I remember just I mean, I think I was weeping actually in the middle of this battle. I suddenly discovered that all my life was adrenaline. And I had to be better than that. I had to be better than that. And now I set up a firing squad to start killing people so that we could get together and kill other people in a war that I knew was stupid and wrong. Well, I
Mm.
mean, like I say, the shallowness of my position then, and I was 28 years old, caught up with me. I was rescued because the skies cleared and American fighter bombers blasted the North Vietnamese, and so I survived that one too. I came back to California, totally broken. It wasn't just PTSD. I mean, hell, I'd walk on the shadow sides of the streets in Palo Alto to avoid sniper fire. Uh, but then in California, there were things called encounter groups where you got together with other people and sort of spilled your guts in the hopes of learning something about yourself. And it turned out these encounter groups were really very helpful to me because I had a lot of people recognize what I was slowly coming to recognize was that I really was a complete human being, that somewhere in me there was a heart, but that probably beginning with that first trip on the freighter in the Far East as a 17-year-old, I had nailed a big heavy sheet of plywood over my heart. So I couldn't feel my heart. I couldn't feel my emotions. All I could feel was the adrenaline rush. And now all of a sudden I was being told to rip it off. And
Mm.
these people in the encounter groups were kind enough and strong enough to ignore my bullshit, my John Wayne bullshit, and help me do that. And it was a long process. It took quite a while, but
Mm.
that was a turning point. And then I was in the Foreign Service still, and but in the Foreign Service in a totally different way. I was no longer a mercenary. I was out there to do good, and my transition was pretty complete. All of a sudden, I took all that energy and skill that I had and decided that I wanted to make the world a better place and not a worse one. And so I did that, and I tried to do that, and the State Department helped me unwittingly by sending me to the United Nations, where there were huge numbers of problems of peace and justice, mostly in the third world, and they put me in charge of American policies in Africa and indeed most of the third world, so-called third world, where I tackled all these problems with the same kind of energy and enthusiasm that I tackled physical risks. I tackled these problems of peace and justice. And I'm happy, still happy and proud of the fact that in this time of my life, I actually helped end apartheid in South Africa by doing some brave and audacious and impactful stuff at the United Nations. So then, by then, I was totally converted, and and I moved with the strength of the converted. And at a certain point, I realized if the State Department wasn't going to follow me, I almost got fired for doing what I did to help end apartheid, because what I was doing was cutting off the profit stream for all those American gun runners and European gun runners who were making all kinds of money shipping guns and military equipment to the South African police, which was then used to kill blacks. Um, but at the United Nations, what I did was get the UN through a series of moves, which I won't go into, but there are a series of moves, some of which were basically I could have been jailed for, because I was passing secret documents to African diplomats showing them how America was making apartheid worse by allowing the shipment of guns and military equipment to the South African military and police. So
Mm.
anyway, I survived that, but I realized I couldn't survive much longer. So at that point, I quit the Foreign Service, and then the whole next chapter of my life, a life totally devoted to service, started. And this is where Ann Medlock and the Giraffe Project come in.
Mhm. Now, the Giraffe Heroes project, you have said, honors people who stick their necks out for a common good. What inspired this metaphor of the giraffe, and why is it so powerful in communicating courage?
Well, if Anne was here, I think I can tell you what she would say. She would say that the metaphor was obvious, because what she was doing, she was sitting there in New York City and looking at all the news on traditional news channels in New York City in 1980, and they were all about gloom and doom. The latest fire, the latest rape, the latest robbery, the latest blow up in the a war someplace. But no one was telling the stories of all the good things that were happening. And she was just looking around and seeing that there were a lot of New Yorkers who were going out of their way to help other people, to help other New Yorkers, to help deal with problems. No one was telling their stories. So she decided to set up a news service that would do just that, that would find heroes and tell their stories in a way of inspiring people to do likewise. And it wasn't a new idea. I mean, as all of your viewers know, people for millennia, I guess, have been telling stories of heroes as a way to get their own people to be heroic. I mean, whether it's Neanderthals dancing around their campfire or the troubadours of the Middle Ages or whatever, it's a pretty well-known tactic that if you want people to be heroic, you don't preach at them. You inspire them through storytelling. And Anne was a great storyteller. So she saw that and began telling these stories, and she needed a name, and because she was all about getting people to stick their necks out, the metaphor of the giraffe became pretty obvious, a giraffe with a long neck. So that's the answer to your question, is that the giraffe was a metaphor for people sticking their necks out. And that's what it became, the Giraffe Project, the Giraffe Heroes Project, looking for people who were sticking their necks out and then telling their stories as broadly as she could. And in the beginning, now we're talking 1982, so a long time ago,
Mhm.
she was telling stories with the media of the day, which were fax machines and paper press releases. Okay,
Wow.
and then she began putting them on radio discs, or sorry, on vinyl discs. I bet that some of the viewers don't even know what a vinyl disc is. It goes
Right,
round and round on a platform and sound comes out, right?
right. It's
Anyway,
one step above the gramophone.
something like that. Anyway, so she started doing this and then shipping, making short stories, 3, 4 minutes, shipping them out to radio stations who then would play them, and it caught on. And so that's how the Giraffe Project began, really, with vinyl disc and fax machines. At about that time, 1982, 83, like I say, I figured I met Anne, saw what she was doing, didn't quite believe that it was as powerful as my wonderful speeches. I was then doing a lot of lecturing anti-war groups, but I wasn't having a lot of success. I was just another leftist out there preaching. But Anne's storytelling through the Giraffe Project was really catching on. A couple of years after she started, there was a nice feature on her in the New York Times. I mean, she was like moving.
Hmm.
So I began to look at it seriously. And then as I began to look at the Giraffe Project, I was looking at Anne. And like I say, we fell madly in love and have been together as husband and wife ever since, working together also on the Giraffe Project, but doing essentially the same thing. We do the same thing now, only we've now, by now, in 2026, we've honored over 2,000 people as Giraffe Heroes and
Mm.
told their stories. Only, of course, now we do it with the very latest in social media and websites and stuff, and no more
Hmm.
fax machines.
So the
Yeah.
project doesn't just honor these heroes, it trains and equips others to be the heroes of tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
How do you do that?
I've written 4 books on leadership and risk taking. Um, if I may put in a plug, my memoir, which is Quest, Risk, Adventure, and the Search for Meaning, is is like the blueprint for how I did it with my life, and I invite other people to join in. But I've written other books that have been published on civic engagement and leadership and tackling tough public problems. Before COVID, I was roaming around doing all kinds of speeches and workshops. But then COVID shut that down. Nobody was going to go into a hotel ballroom for 3 years.
Mm.
But at the same time, I also became much more adept at using social media. That's where our effort now is in social media. And some of them are like podcasts like this one. But I also I have my own short form video series called, you'll love this, Badass Granddad.
Yes, and I've watched many of them. I
Oh,
love
good.
them.
Yeah, only you know. They're just 3 minutes long, but I tell a bit of an adventure story and then I segue to some kind of life lesson about courage and perseverance or whatever. And then there's some kind of a call to action, getting people to consider taking some action on whatever big problem is messing up their lives. Um, Ann and I both do a lot of stuff on social media channels, all oriented toward getting people to stick their necks out. So in many ways, we're smaller. The Giraffe Heroes Project is much smaller in terms of people because we don't need a lot of people. There's no more fax machines, no more press releases. It's all done now electronically, and
Mm.
so we have a bunch of contractors who are experts in media and outreach and PR and that kind of stuff, and they help us. But yeah, so the Giraffe Project is booming, and as you say, I'm very glad you did. It's more than just inspiring. Our one-liner is we move people to stick their necks out and give them tools to succeed, and that's what we do. The tools themselves are very clearly laid out in our website, which is real simple, giraffe.org, not com, org. And you can dial up all kinds of stuff, including a segment called Coach's Corner, where we offer short form lessons in everything from how to build a team to, how to write a political ad.
Mm.
Yeah, we're all over the place, but basically it's all with one mission to move people to find the meaning of their life through some kind of service. And that service can be anything. For an 11-year-old, that service may be confronting a bully in the schoolyard or picking up trash in the local park. For adults, of course, it's more serious stuff from global warming to maybe a whistleblowing incident in their company or government. Right now, quite frankly, I don't want to get political, but a fair amount of our effort is in trying to counter some of what we feel is damage being done by the Trump administration.
Mm. You've written several books, and your book, Stick Your Neck Out, connects real world activism with practical tools. What's one street smart strategy you think every aspiring change maker should pay attention to?
Yeah, well, I go back to first causes. There's lots of practical things that doesn't take me to tell you how to do it in terms of how to plan, how to create allies, how to deal with Congress, stuff like that. That's all pretty well known. Other people have written books about that. So I always go back to first causes, and I tell people, look, what's important for all of our lives, whether you're a left winger or right winger, whatever age, and of course, whatever color you are, wherever country you come from, what's important to all of us is to find the meaning of our personal lives. That's what's important. And like I say, I don't care who you are, but when you look in the mirror in the morning, what looks back at you? You want to know you're here on the planet for a purpose, that you're not just here marking time. That would be like becoming a Swiss watch with no hands on it. It makes no sense. You're here for a purpose, and you need to spend as much time and effort as you can at any age to find what that purpose is, what that meaning is. Some of the pointers will be pretty obvious to you. You're a great musician, so maybe the purpose of your life has to do with music or the arts. You're great with figures, so maybe doing something as a scientist or engineer, or you're great with whatever. And there's a reason why a bear has claws, right? I mean, there's a reason why you have the talents that you do. So you take that as a starting point and take a look at where you can make a difference. What really is pissing, excuse me. Well, what's really ticking you off? Is it Gaza? Is it the cutoff on food stamps? Is it whatever? And then tackle that one. And there's all kinds of practical things you can do, but the main thing is getting focused on the fact that whatever it is, it's got to be meaningful to you, so that when you do it, you have that satisfaction that you're here on life for a purpose and you have discovered that purpose, and you're going to spend the rest of your darn life promoting that purpose, some kind of service. I do a lot of speaking and presentations to business groups, for example, and I'm very adamant in talking to business people that I'm not talking about sackcloth and ashes in terms of service. I'm not talking about becoming Mother Teresa. I'm talking about taking the situation that you're in, the skills that you have, and making a difference. And for a business person, that may well mean making a good product, selling it at a fair price under fair labor conditions, mindful of environmental concerns, and being a good neighbor in the communities where you operate. That's a service.
Mm.
And so that makes business people feel a little bit more comfortable that I'm not some crazy leftist saying, "Oh, you have to drop everything and go out there and work for Habitat for Humanity." No, many of them do. Some of them do, but many of them find that service right where they are. And so I do a lot of coaching, telling people that what I'm talking for is not necessarily a complete revamping of their lives, but reshaping their lives so that their talents and skills are laser focused on whatever they've discovered their purpose is.
Mm. How do you help ordinary people recognize the extraordinary impact they can have, even when they fear criticism or failure?
By telling stories, people have recognized that from the beginning of time. You're sitting there and you're looking out at oh, I don't know. Let's say you've got a totally inept school board that wants to ban books, it wants to do all kinds of stuff, and the community doesn't think much about it. And you're just sitting there saying, someone's got to stop them. Well, what we say is, well, how about you? How about you? Get involved. Get involved. You can do it. And by the way, here's someone not that far away in Boise, Idaho. Here's someone in Tuscaloosa, Tennessee, or wherever Tuscaloosa is, Alabama, I guess, who's doing the same thing, confronting the same kind of problem. And he or she has made a difference. He or she stood up at a school board meeting and says, no, what you're doing is wrong. And I want to stop. I want us to stop that as a community. It's happening all over the place, only you don't know about it, but I'm telling you about it. We're telling you about it. Here is 1, 2, 5, 15 different examples of educators who are taking on school boards to stop some malpractice. There's no reason why you can't do that too. That's a powerful, powerful prompt. And that's what we do. And we've been doing it for 42 years. I don't know. I suspect we've moved hundreds of thousands of people to make that decision, to get off their couch, to look at a story or something, or to hear about someone who's just like them, same age, same sex, same country, same color, or whatever, and they're taking the bit in their teeth and they're doing something and sticking their necks out. Sorry for crossing metaphors here. And you're sitting on your couch just griping. Well, stop griping and do something.
Mm.
It's a very powerful technique. I mean, like I say, from Neanderthals dancing around their campfire, you want someone to be brave, well, you show them someone else being brave, someone that's close enough to them that they can follow them. For example, we don't, in the Giraffe Heroes Project, honor George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or even Rosa Parks because they're already famous. They don't need us. History records their bravery. It's people that no one's ever heard of that are
Mm.
doing simple things, some of them simple, some of them not so simple, that you can do too, because they're doing it in small communities and large communities, and they're doing it in Africa and Asia and whatever. So they're believable, they're credible. So we look for unsung heroes for the most part.
Mm. What do you think are some common misconceptions about courage? And how do you redefine courage in the context of everyday life and service?
Common misperceptions is that it's big guys with muscles, or it's extraordinary people doing physical things. I suppose for teenagers in particular, where so many of our values are shaped, that they get crossways because they think courage is physical, and boys in particular. And so a lot of things that young people think is courage is physical courage. And so, a Tom Cruise character is courageous, but someone doing something quietly changing a community in another movie is goes by unnoticed. So a lot of it is divorcing the concept of courage from just being physical courage to, if you want to, moral courage, ethical courage, spiritual courage. I like that. I'm not a churchgoer, but I think the word spiritual does fit. And if you believe in
Mm,
anything higher than self, that it's finding that inner courage to
mm,
stand up to evil, to stand up to incompetence, and the people that do that can be 11-year olds, or I think one of our giraffes was 103, an environmentalist in Florida who helped save the alligators or whatever she was doing. Um, that's the key thing is defining courage much more broadly, especially for young people who tend to think that courage is physical courage, which is what I did. I mean, gee, until I was 30 years old, courage for me was the fact that I could wade in through a hail of bullets or climb a mountain wall, and people would say, "Boy, that guy is really courageous," and I would say, "Yeah, I'm really courageous. Yeah, just like John Wayne, Tom Cruise. That's me. Yeah, 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 yeah." Uh, and I didn't understand that the real courage in my life was not physical at all. And when I started taking non-physical risks, like at the United Nations, like I said, I almost got fired several times at the UN for going way beyond what my government wanted me to do because of all the constraints, some of which were caused by corruption in our own government, some not. But I stuck my neck out a lot, and that was took far more courage. And the other thing was just being courageous enough to admit my mistakes, to fail, to climb up back when I got flattened, and to try again to solve a problem. These took real courage, and I call that, I don't know what you want to call it, spiritual courage, moral courage, whatever, but it's what I had to assemble. It's what I had to find in myself. Physical courage for me has always been easy. And I have to be
mm,
careful here because for a lot of people, physical courage is really difficult. The idea of being hurt or whatever. For me, that was never a problem. So it was an relatively easy choice once that battle in Vietnam had turned my life upside down. Uh, that the courage I needed was spiritual, moral courage, not physical, because the physical courage I already had. But for most other people, it's combining everything. Yes, you need to be physically courageous, perhaps, but at the same time, you need to develop different kinds of courage. The courage, for example, that you had when you ran for office. That took guts. I mean, you were running against an incumbent, and you had a lot of people on his side that probably wanted you to sit up and just to sit down and shut up, but you didn't. So, that's the kind of courage that the Giraffe Project is really trying to develop in people, help them develop. We don't tell
Mm.
them what to do. We show them role models of people doing it and say, hey, here's a great role model. How about this?
Mm. What's next for the Giraffe Project? Where do you see the organization going in the next 10 years?
I think the strategy for the Giraffe Heroes Project has been set for 42 years, moving
Mhm.
people to stick their necks out, giving them tools to succeed. What changes all the time, and hopefully will keep changing in answer to your question, is our tactics. Strategy is set. The tactics change almost every week. For example, this new short form video series that I'm doing, Badass Granddad, is on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. I didn't, I mean, me on TikTok? Are you kidding? TikTok is for kids. I mean, whatever. So it was a real leap into the unknown, and it's really caught on. I mean, that's last time I looked yesterday, I had like 80,000 followers, which is a lot. I mean,
Fantastic.
I've had people come to me and say, "Hey, Badass Granddad is so popular. If you wanted to, you could charge $100 an episode in ads." And I said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to clutter up my message with ads. No." But it's really succeeding. So that's one thing. And then the other forms of social media. My wife Ann, for example, is particularly vigorous on Facebook accounts, and she's like. I don't know, hundreds of thousands. I don't know how many, but she's got a huge following on Facebook. You can grab her with Ann Medlock, A-N-N without an E, and see what she's up to. She's an author, and she's a poet, and she's a political activist, and she's absolutely fierce. Boy, when we disagree on something, you don't want to be around. we, we are really both very emphatic in our opinion making, our opinions. But we love each other dearly, have for 43 years, 44 years now. And it's like, okay, we're a great team. And life is never boring.
No, doesn't sound like it is.
No, it's not.
What would be your best advice for someone who wants to stick their neck out but doesn't know where to start?
Yeah. Well, we touched on this a little bit before, and if you don't know where to start, just go right back to the basics and take stock of who you are. Like I say, what are you good at? What are you not good at? What do you really like to do? One thing I used to do in workshops back when I did a lot of in-person workshops, I would ask two people to pair off, and then I would ask one person to start saying all the kinds of things that they might think they might like to do. And they would go through a list of maybe 5 or 10 things. Well, I would have liked to go into medical school, or I would have, big, big things like that. And so I would then say, fine, and I'll come up with another 10, and then another 10, until they had 100 things, including stuff like, man, I love playing the saxophone in a high school band, and then I had to quit to go to law school. So they come up with a list of 100 things, including some absolutely wild, impossible things. Then I would have the other person slowly read back the list of 100 things, looking for eye movements and body postures in the first person, the person who'd come up with a list of 100.
Hmm.
And darned if 3 times out of four, at least, they couldn't immediately tell at a word or a couple phrases where the other person stood up, their chin went up, their eyes changed. Clearly, that word meant something to them more than the others. And so that would help. And it may very well be that out of those 100 words to this white shoe lawyer, the thing that most got them excited was playing the saxophone. It's good. It's possible. So
Okay.
maybe what that person needed to do is look for something musical. And I did this. I remember this is a short story, but I'll tell it. I was lecturing to a political party in Germany, the Green Party. And a woman comes up to me with much your question. She's just so angry about the right-wing politicians in Germany, and she couldn't figure out what to do. She couldn't figure out a strategy of what to do, and every time she tried to do something politically, she'd get squashed because she didn't have the political power to make it work. So I sat there and listened to her, and basically did a short form of what I described earlier. I just, well, what really turns you on? What do you really like to do? And she thought about it. And then it took her a while, but she finally came up with, I used to be a dancer. And in fact, I was in the local ballet for my small city. I was pretty good at it. But then I got wrapped up in Green Party leftist politics in Germany, and I forgot it. I haven't danced professionally for 10 years or 5 years, whatever it was. And then I asked her, I had the sense to stop the political discussion and spend the time telling this whole group of two or 300 of her peers what it was like to dance. And as she started talking about dancing, all of a sudden the heaviness she felt at being unsuccessful in politics lifted, and her voice changed. It changed. It changed. She straightened up and she began to talk about dancing and about what it felt like to have an audience looking at her as she did her moves, and she was pretty darn good at it. And so, and she just loved flying through the air and all the things that dancers do. Uh,
Mhm.
and I said, "Oh, wow, that's impressive. Did everyone in this room see a different person up there talking about dance?" And they also, "Oh, yeah, yeah. Marisa has never been that excited about anything before." I'm making it up. Let's call her Marisa. Uh, so I said, "Okay, now what if, Marisa, you took that same enthusiasm and put it into politics and saw politics as a dance?" That
Mm.
was the absolute key. And so we practiced what that would look like. Going into a room full of politicians who were really to call you a know-nothing blankety blank, and just laughing at them and saying, "Hey guys, let's just dance our way through this." Or not, maybe not use that word, but just say, approach it as a dance.
Mm.
uh, and try different moves and fly through the air, but be lighthearted about it all and don't get bogged down by the nastiness of the political environment that you're in. Treat it as a dance. And she absolutely got it, at least from subsequent interventions with her. So that's the answer to your question. That's an answer to your question. You find out what you're really good at, and then you find a way to transfer it to the problem that you really want to solve. And in this case, it was finding out that what really moved this person, Marisa, was dance, and that what she had to do
Mm.
was dance her way through life, including meetings with disgruntled, angry, unkind oppositionist politicians.
I suppose it can be a dance. That's very interesting.
It doesn't always work. I'm not saying that all this, this stuff always works, but it works so often that I keep telling the story because I've seen it happen in lots of other places too. In some cases, there is a real break. I mean, for example, I remember doing a big deal annual convention, annual meeting speech to a high-priced Seattle law firm, and I gave my usual, giraffe talk, and there was a polite applause at the end of it, but clearly I was challenging these people to look beyond their next client or their next business challenge. Uh, and then 3 years later, I get this letter from a guy who was a senior vice president in the law firm at the time. And he said, "I've been thinking about that speech ever since." And he said, "I didn't tell you, but a year after that speech, I quit the law firm because I realized that I was then 48 years old and I wasn't doing anything that made my heart sing. I was tired of making money for Boeing or whatever. Uh, and what was concerning me was global warming and environmental issues. And what I've done now in the last 2 years is I started my own environmental concern about saving the last of the redwoods in a certain section of Northern California. And I'm having some success. It's hard. I'm raising money. It's a nonprofit, but my heart is singing because I'm really making a difference as an environmentalist. And now that I'm in my 50s, I've got, 35 years left or whatever, of using my skills as a lawyer, and not just to sue the bastards that are cutting the trees down, but to use my skills as a lawyer, my thinking skills to help make a difference in terms of the environment. And at this point, 3 years after your speech, I thought it was time to tell you. I get letters. I don't want to say I get letters like that all the time, but I get messages like that on a fairly regular basis. So sometimes there is a market change. In some cases, it's like Marisa in Germany, where it's not so much of a change, but a change in attitude, how you approach the
Mm.
challenge that you're facing. But one way or the other, it's a change and it takes courage, and that means sticking your neck out, which is why I'm so happy to continue working with Anne on the Giraffe Heroes project, because I think we've absolutely nailed it in terms of the overall strategy of what to do.
Mm. What's one change you'd really love to see in civic engagement in the world?
I suppose, like most people, I'm very distressed by the polarizations that are tearing this world and our country apart. And the fact that we can't talk to each other or find it really difficult to talk to each other. And things are getting worse. The only way we can seem to be able to solve problems now is to invade another country. It didn't used to be like that, and now it's at a point now where we simply can't talk to each other. And I would say the answer to your question is okay, don't get totally swept up and hurt and angry by the fact that it looks like Ukraine and Gaza are going to be with us for a long time. Hundreds of thousands more people are going to die. Uh, Take a look at what's going on locally, where you can actually make a difference and build from there. Take a look at your own city council. Take a look at your own school board. Take a look at your own corporate management. Take a look at what your own corporate board is doing. If there's stuff that distresses you and you can't talk to people, okay, then in a small area where you can talk to people because you see these people at the grocery store all the time, maybe you're in the same bowling league or some damn thing, something like that, and start talking to them. Talk about, and if you can't talk about politics, you don't want to do a left-right politics thing. I understand that. I mean, it's kind of like Thanksgiving dinner where Uncle Harry's blathering about his politics and no one wants to listen to it. Start talking about, oh, your grandchildren, for example. Oh, yeah, I don't. She's she's 4 inches shorter than the other girls, and it's like it's really hurting her. And oh, well, I have the same thing happen. Whatever. You start talking about little stuff until you start to build some modicum, some little bit of trust. And that's the key. The answer to your question is you find a way to build trust. I am not going to march out there immediately to the local mega headquarters and start building trust with people that hate my guts because of my blog posts that are anti-Trump. I'm not going to do that. That's a waste of time.
Mm.
But I will maybe meet that same person in the bowling alley or in the shopping center or whatever. And I will be able to talk about our grandkids or the fact that the Seattle Mariners almost got to the World Series but didn't or whatever. Um, all that basically says to the other person, hey, I know we disagree with each other. We can't talk, but damn it, wasn't that awful that last game that the Mariners lost. They should have won it. And we'll talk for 20 minutes about that.
Mhm.
So the next time we talk, with a little bit of trust that we're both sports fans and we both understand that the Mariners really should have traded for X or Y during the offseason, whatever. And so you talk and talk about things that are small. And then finally you might get into, this business about banning books. I know you're behind that, but Robinson Crusoe, really? I mean, I just want to understand why Robinson Crusoe is a bannable book or whatever. I'm just
Mhm.
making this up. Um, you know, and at that point, because we've talked about our grandchild, he might actually stop and say, it's because my wife told me I should, or because someone else in the office says, in Robinson Crusoe, and so we maybe talk about that and
Mhm.
whatever. And so you begin to move up. Maybe you'll never get to talking about what the hell to do in Venezuela, but maybe you will, and maybe you'll discover that as a MAGA person, he really doesn't like foreign interventions, and that at the same time, I oppose it because for different reasons. Because as an ex-foreign service officer, I think we're getting into a whole lot of trouble we can't handle. But we come to the same conclusion that maybe that was a mistake, and so we can talk about that. I have a wonderful friend, and I call him a wonderful friend. He is about as far strung right as you can be. He votes for Trump. He campaigns for him. He knocks on doors. He's a total MAGA Republican. We got together because we were both in the foreign service, so we knew each other, and we're both sport fans, and so that's why the sports analogy. And we have a bet, $10 or $20 on his team or my team, football, baseball, basketball, whatever. And I've come to really read his stuff. And I found out that Leo, despite his right-wing beliefs, his views on and mine on China are very close. And on tariffs, to my great surprise, he thinks tariffs are a mistake just as much as I do. So he and I can vent about tariffs and we can vent about American policies toward China. We can't vent on, I don't know, abortion or other stuff, but we don't even try. We can talk about stuff. And we're building up a trust so that I count him as a friend, a real friend. And I try to get other people to talk to Leo and say, Leo's not a bad guy. His views on women's rights are Neanderthalic, but at the same time, his views on tariffs and trade in China and some other things are pretty good. So let's talk with him, see what we can build here, and get other people to do the same thing. But it's local and it's personal. Because I think I remember, I'm older than you, but I sure remember as a younger person and getting involved in politics back in the day when I considered running for office, that you may disagree with someone politically, but you could sit down and have a conversation. And I want to get back to that. I think most of us do. I don't want to see someone in the aisle in the drugstore and have them turn down the other aisle not to talk to me because we used
Mhm.
to be friends. Okay, I don't want that. Um, so find some small ways to build trust and build from there.
Mhm. I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in our own judgments and opinions and yelling and screaming and banging on the table that we don't stop to understand what we can agree on. And I think there's more that we can agree on than there is for us to fight about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, your organization, Strategic Talent Management, we're talking about strategic talent. What's strategic is finding a talent that takes trust to build, and then you got something.
Mhm. Right. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate this. It's been fascinating, and I've really enjoyed hearing your story. To my listeners, we will give you some information about how to reach out to John and learn more about him in the show notes. So be looking for that. And again, John, thank you so much for being here. And I hope that we can talk again sometime.
Well, true. Yeah, yeah, no, I would love to do that. Let's wait 6 months, 8 months or so. The world will be a totally different place a year from now.
Right.
and we can do a totally different podcast. But yeah, I think you're a terrific host, and you let me blather on for too long, I'm sure. But then again, that's me. But I'm happy to be here, and I think the two of us together have created something that hopefully will make some other people ponder a little bit more. I hope so.
I hope so too. Thank you.
John and his wife, Ann Medlock, have developed a truly amazing and impactful organization. I encourage you to check out the Giraffe Heroes project at giraffe.org. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Until next time.